Velma is written like what you would get if you asked an AI to write a script combining Riverdale, Rick and Morty, and Big Mouth. I watched the first 2 episodes of Velma, and it was pretty bad. And I'm definitely not the only one who thinks this. It currently has 1.4 stars on IMDb and a 6% viewer rating on Rotten Tomatoes. If you are unfamiliar with what the show is, here's a description on the official trailer. Velma is an adult animated comedy series telling the origin story of Velma Dinkley, the unsung and underappreciated brains of the Scooby-Doo Mystery Inc. gang. This original and humorous spin unmasks the complexion and colorful past of one of America's most beloved mystery solvers. So why is it so bad? Why are so many people hating on it? Well, number one, it's a Scooby-Doo show without Scooby-Doo. This is the only iteration of the Mystery Gang without Scooby-Doo. And why, you may ask? Because the Warner Bros. Wouldn't even grant the license to use Scooby for the show. Both the Warner Bros. And the Velma team felt the character of Scooby was too oriented towards children and that it wouldn't be appropriate to put in the show. Quote unquote, it wouldn't feel right. Number two, every single main character is absolutely insufferable, especially the actual main character, Velma. The whole show is supposed to be an origin story about Velma and the gang, but it strays so far from who the original characters are. Genuinely, I think they took all of the characters' personalities and tried to find the exact opposite qualities to build the characters in the show. Let's start with the main character, Velma. Velma's a bit of an outsider with a bit of a quirky personality. Scratch that. She's literally just a plain jerk. She is so unbelievably snarky, rude, and judgmental, and all of that is done so poorly. You can have snarky, rude, and judgmental characters who are still likable or at the very least entertaining. A great example of this would be Rick from Rick and Morty. However, Velma is wildly unlikable. There's this one scene where Norville is admitting to her that he has feelings for her, and instead of having an actual appropriate response, Velma starts cracking up and doubles down that she would never ever like him. And one of the first scenes in the show is Velma literally assaulting Daphne. It hurts so much to watch. It's awful. Velma was always the intelligent, understanding, and she was always so lovable and sassy. There are so many other better things they could have done with her in the show while still making it fit adult humor. I just think they did Velma such a disservice. Daphne is portrayed as very shallow and is supposed to be a mean, popular girl. Maybe they're going to try to give her a redemption arc. Well, I'm sure they probably are, considering they had her and Velma make out in the second episode of the show after they were just hating each other. They also decided to make Daphne a drug dealer. It wasn't an awful decision, but just a weird one. Honestly, I don't think Daphne is that awful, but I just think the things that they've done with her are just so weird. Norville is probably the least insufferable of the main four. Honestly, there's not very much bad about his actual personality aside from the fact that he is a mega simp for Velma. He was literally prepared to sell his own organs in order to guilt Velma into dating him. Yeah, he's a mega simp. But again, aside from that, he actually seems kind and caring and thoughtful. My main gripe with him is that the general direction they choose to go with the character was just bizarre. Number one, they decided to go with Shaggy's legal birth name, Norville, instead of the classic nickname Shaggy. Again, I'm sure maybe later in the series they might give him the nickname of Shaggy since this is supposed to be an origin story, but it's just weird. In every other iteration of Scooby-Doo, he's only called Norville by adults or for like official business or whatever. Also, they decided to take the one funny adult humor quality about Shaggy and run in the total opposite direction. Shaggy in the rest of the Scooby-Doo media is so clearly coded to be a druggie. He's just generally goofy, easily scared, he's got munchies all the time. In this one, they made it a point to make him hate drugs.
It has something to do with drugs, which I hate.
Maybe they think this contrasting view of Shaggy is funny since it goes against our own preconceived notions of him, but it's done in such an unfunny way. And Fred, dear God, they did Fred so dirty. In Velma, Fred is portrayed to be a stuck-up, egotistical, self-centered, incapable, idiotic, rich white guy, and they go out of their way to do so. Honestly, I think he's probably the worst out of all of the characters, maybe aside from Velma. They start off by having Fred explain that he basically doesn't remember ugly people.
Hey, Fred.
Do I know you?
It's Velma from school.
I have a disease where I can't recognize people who aren't hot.
Is it called rudeness?
I have an illness!
And it just gets worse from there. He is so unbelievably dependent on others that he literally cannot cut his own food or feed himself. All of this is the absolute antithesis of who Fred was as a character. Again, maybe they're trying to do the same thing here as they did with Shaggy and think it's funny that he's so different from the original character, but yet again, it's done so poorly that it's not even funny in the slightest. In the original series, Fred was an extremely capable, kind, and smart leader. He cared a lot about the people around him, but in this show, it's almost unbearable to watch any scene Fred appears in. It's really that bad. The humor is plain bad. Look, I get that humor can be crude and funny, but there are so many shows that do that well. Oftentimes, the jokes in this show are so unnecessary and detract from the scene that is taking place. Literally, one of the opening scenes is 2 cockroaches banging each other. How does this add to the story at all? How does this set up the scene? Personally, I do not find bug sex humorous, and I think it was a horrible way to open up the entire series. Later in the episode, Fred throws a paper slicer and cuts a boy's leg in half, and nobody even blinks an eye? It was such an unfunny moment, and honestly, it's bewildering considering the whole show is trying to uncover who is committing violent murders. I feel like after finding the brainless girl in the locker rooms the day before, people would be a lot more concerned. I don't know, maybe they thought this was the funny part of it. They also made Velma to be some sort of trash goblin. They made scenes where she is grabbing food out of the trash to eat it, and her dad specifically mentions a time where Velma was grabbing food out of the garbage bin. Again, maybe there's a universe where this could be set up in a funny way, but the show does such a bad job at setting up the humor that even the things that they try to make funny are just not funny. The show is supposed to be adult humor, yet it so often misses the mark. Honestly, I have no idea who this humor is even supposed to be for. There are few redeeming qualities about the show, and by a few, I mean 2. First, I really like the art style and animation, but also I'm just kind of a sucker for animated TV shows in general. Also, the actual mystery is super intriguing, and I genuinely want to find out who the serial killer is, but also that could just be because I really like mysteries. Aside from that, the show is pretty insufferable. If you stuck all the way to the end of the video, thank you so much for watching, and if you liked, give it a like, leave me a comment down below, and if you want to support me and see more stuff from me in the future, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. Alright, again, thank you so much for sticking all the way to the end of the video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!